afternoon, everyone. Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Fiona Wilson, and I have the privilege of being UNH's Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer and the Director of the Sustainability Institute. And we're super excited to have you here this afternoon for the third of our annual Changemaker Speaker Series. This speaker series is really about bringing to campus exemplary role models, people who are really using the force of business and public policy to drive positive change in the world, to address some of the world's biggest sustainability challenges. And we have three outstanding speakers who are joining us today. So I'm going to invite them to come up to the stage now. So our first speaker is Dan Clapp. He's a proud UNH alum, and he's co-founder and employee owner of Vision Energy. Come on up, Dan. Next, I'm going to invite up Rebecca Hamilton. Rebecca is co-CEO and a second-generation family owner of W.S. Badger Company. So nice to have you here, Rebecca. And last but absolutely no means least, Howard Brodsky, who is co-founder, chairman, and CEO of CCA Global Partners. So what are we going to talk about today? The title of today's event is about mission-driven business models, a movement towards an inclusive and equitable economy. Why are we talking about this topic, and why is it relevant to you? Many of you I know are business students in Paul College. The truth is that there are massive inequalities in wealth and income, and they are major issues of today's economy and society, not only around the world, but also right here in the United States, including in the state of New Hampshire. And while the free market system is, at least in theory, the best means of ensuring economic opportunity for all, we know, and there's a big realization, I think, coming to bear, that current business structures often exacerbate these issues of inequality. So this panel is really about discussing some of these emerging ideas of alternative models of ownership and governance, such as employee ownership, cooperatives, and benefit corporations. These are all ownership and governance structures that have the potential to build what we would like to call a genuinely inclusive economy, with equal opportunity for people of all backgrounds to have access to good jobs, to build economic security, and to live a life of dignity and meaning. Before we get into the panel, I want to just say a couple of quick thank yous. This event and the Changemaker Speaker Series is a collaboration between UNH's Sustainability Institute, but also our partners, the Paul College of Business and Economics and the Carsey School of Public Policy. We are partners in what we call Changemaker Education, really building education programs for students like you who really want to think about how to use the business and public policy as a force for good in the world. I'm also really happy that we have an external partner, New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility, who is inviting their members and the broader community to be part of these events with us. And last, but definitely by no means least, I want to thank our lead co-host, the Responsible Governance and Sustainable Citizenship Project, which is a project of the College of Liberal Arts, has provided pivotal funding to make these events possible over the years. So thank you, RGCSP, and particularly to Professor Trascoma. Lastly, I want to also thank our faculty colleagues and partners. So Professors Woodman and Windegatter and Armstrong, thank you so much to your professors for collaborating with us and building this into your curriculum as part of the business ethics course. So with no further ado, we want to move into the event. So here's what's going to happen. We've asked each of our amazing companies and role models to spend about 7 or 8 minutes giving you a sort of mini TED Talk to talk to you a little bit about the company that they own or run, but also about the unique business model that exemplifies their business. And they're going to talk a little bit about how that business model, how that governance and ownership structure really helps lead to greater equality for all. So we're going to start off with Howard Brodsky from CCA Global Partners. I'm going to hand over to you, Howard.
Thank you very much, Fiona. When you talk about inequality, it's probably at the height of the world right now. And in America, it is no better than anywhere else. It's amazing that 5 people in the world have as much money as half the world's population. Now, 2 years ago, that was 20 people, and 8 years ago, it was like 150. Not that that was good, but you could take one car and have as much money and people in one car than half the world's population. Is amazing. And 37% of Americans have a negative net worth. That means you take everything they have, their car, their clothes, their house, they have a negative net worth. So I say, you know, we're living in a society of full employment, not full opportunity. People do not have full opportunity. An enormous amount of people are making minimum wage, and you try to live at a family income making in New Hampshire is probably as bad as anywhere because minimum wage is federal, $7.50 an hour. And try to live on $7.50 an hour. So yes, the labor market is full, but it's not full with jobs that people can really sustain. And a cooperative structure, I call it, is different. It is capitalism with a conscience. So it is definitely capitalism. Our company is very profitable, but it's owned by the people. And I think that's a crucial element. You know, in elections today, people are talking about alternatives, and you have the extremes from, you know, the moderates to the liberals. That we, you know, one is everybody should pay for everything, and I think people need subsidies. I don't think people want subsidies. People want opportunity. That's what people need. People need ownership and opportunity in our world. And cooperatives give people ownership and opportunity. And I just want to probably give you two examples before I go into our company a little bit in cooperatives that I think really describe what a cooperative is. There's a cooperative in Tonga, West Africa called a Lafia. And in Tonga, shea butter, nuts that came from the tree, is a big element, and most of the women did not go to school, even high school. They'd go and they'd pick the nuts up off the ground and take them to the market every day, and big companies would pay them just pennies on the dollar. They had no scale. All the women were coming individually to take the nuts off the tree. And somebody from the UN came one day and said, you know something, I think you could form a cooperative. So he took 400 of the women and they formed a cooperative called a Lafia. So they took all their nuts, instead of bringing them to the market individually each day, and they bought a warehouse. And they put all the nuts in the warehouse, and they had more negotiating power. Well, that company today now has 7,000 women in Tonga, West Africa. And how big is it? Well, that product is sold in America. Shea butter, if you look, a Lafia shea butter is sold in most natural food stores, but all across America. They have built that cooperative, pays 4 times what they were getting paid. 400%. They're doing the same work. They're getting paid 400% what they're getting paid because they're part of a cooperative. The cooperatives that built 15 schools, and the cooperative bought 18,000 bicycles for kids to get to the school. And the cooperative is owned by the 7,000 women. That's the power of a cooperative. It's owned by the people, it's capitalistic, but it's capitalism with a conscience. It's people first, not profit first. And I think when people think about cooperatives, they think of the local food co-op, and that's a good thing. There are 1 billion members of cooperatives in the world. In South America, cooperatives deliver almost half of all the health care at 75% less than if you're not part of a cooperative. 75% less, because it's a cooperative. So cooperatives have enormous strength and power. Our company is a $10 billion company, over $10 billion company. So we help family businesses stay in business. We have multi-cooperatives, we're a cooperative for cooperatives. But one of our cooperatives is bike stores and ski stores. So the local bike store and ski store, we want to keep family businesses, 1,200 family businesses go out of business every single day. We keep family businesses in business because we give them the scale for buying and marketing and insurance and credit card processing, so they can do what they do, which is take care of their customer and have a family business. I always say, do we really want the same company, a Walmart, in Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Maine, and that's what America should be about? I think family business is the heart of America, and our scale permits, in many industries, small family businesses to not just succeed, but to prosper. And so our company is very profitable. I'm the co-founder, chairman, and CEO. I don't own a single share of the company. So it's almost an $11 billion company, and it's owned by local family businesses in 4 countries. And cooperatives could be in any sector, any business you can imagine. I have a friend that has a pet store cooperative. It is powerful. So just give you an idea of what is the difference between a corporation and a cooperative. A corporation has quarterly returns. You know, all you have to do is look at the stock market. Not good the last couple of days, but you look at the stock market, and it's all about how much you're making in the last 3 months. In a cooperative, it's all about long-term results. In a private corporation, it's all about profit to the shareholders. In a cooperative, it's distributed profit among members. So our members get 100% of our profit. We've given back almost $2 billion in profit. Not one penny's come to me. It's all gone to the members. Return on investment, employee and member culture. We care about future profit. We care about shared equitable growth. And investor relations, a cooperative is democratically controlled. Every member of the cooperative has 1 share and has the right to control. And instead of stock value, it's collective social good. But these aren't small companies. Land O'Lakes is a $42 billion cooperative of farmers. Ocean Spray is a cooperative. There are cooperatives all around the world that do amazing work that are scalable. I think the one thing with cooperatives is it's not something that has to be just a little business, and not that that's wrong, but cooperatives can scale, and they can really make an amazing impact. And I want to just show you, so in conventional corporation, I say that I think people feel powerless today. They feel hopeless. It's wealth extracting. Wealth extracting to me is when the company is taking so much disproportionate to what the workers are doing. The people that are making the company successful aren't getting the money. That's why the top 1% have gotten 90% of all the wealth in the last 20 years. And that's why you could put 5 people in a car that have more money. So a cooperative is inclusive, it's empowered, it's hopeful, it's wealth creating, it's democratically controlled, and it's equitable and equal. It is truly capitalism with a conscience, and it's scalable. And just to give you a quick overview, there are credit unions, there are utility co-ops, there are farmer co-ops, there are food co-ops, there's retail co-ops, there's housing co-op, there's worker co-ops, there's educational co-ops, and a childcare center. So our company has 20,000 childcare centers that are part of us. One childcare center alone, we saved them $50,000 in insurance. And the person came up to who runs and said, you know what that meant to us? We could hire 2 more people to take care of the kids. So co-ops have enormous power, even healthcare co-ops. Co-op could be in any segment, in any part. It is powerful. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. And how many people are members of cooperatives around the world?
1 billion.
1 billion. Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Next up is Dan Clapp from Revision Energy.
Thanks, Fiona. Let's see. Oh, we'll get through that one. Thank you, everybody. I took a public speaking class in my junior year at UNH, so I'm hoping it helps me out. But so I'm from Revision Energy. We're an employee-owned B Corp. We have 275 co-owners in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and we're very mission-driven, value-driven organization. Our mission is we're looking to lead our communities in solving the environmental problems caused by fossil fuels while alleviating economic and social injustice. So that is wage inequality. That includes wage inequality. So if you think about this, milk at $3.75 a gallon, or $3.70, Somebody working minimum wage, it takes them close to a half hour to earn enough to buy a gallon of milk. Somebody with median wage, around $16 an hour, it'll take them 13 minutes of working time to buy a gallon of milk. The CEOs that are out there, it'll take them less than a second. On average, the top 350 CEOs in America are making $18.9 million a year. That's 321 times more than the average worker, which makes around $60,500. So as you can see, like Howard mentioned, that wage gap is continuing to grow, right? For example, Jeff Bezos at Amazon, he's created a very powerful company worth $130 billion. That's great. He just announced that he's gonna put $10 million towards a fund that's gonna fight climate change, something that his company contributes to, and we all do, let's be honest. But, you know, the fact that you're 130 million when you're proud to give your employees a minimum wage of $15. If just last year, Amazon stopped giving 2 shares away per year to their employees. If they actually had what we had, the amount of shares that Sears employees had in the 50s, each employee would have around $380,000 worth of stock in Amazon. And unfortunately, some of that result is Jeff Bezos would have a little bit less than $130 billion to spend. So that is what we're trying to avoid here. That is where we need to move to a business model that's more inclusive. And what we have done at Revision is transition to an employee stock ownership plan, ESOP. Apologize about my notes here. But so what takes change is scale, right? It's important that we start local, start small, set the example, but we really do need scale. And we're starting to see some of those changes, that really call out what Milton Friedman has done, his School of Economics in the 70s, where the job of a corporation is to drive value to the shareholder. And then the thought was those shareholders will in turn support, all the nonprofits that needed the support. Well, Larry Fink, the founder and CEO of BlackRock, which that fund manages around $7 trillion, just came out to say that climate change is going to be their main focus of, around injustice. The Business Roundtable, made up of around 180 CEOs of the largest companies in the world, they just came out and made a statement that they reject Milton Friedman's, mantra of the value all goes to the shareholders. It is interesting that, you have to be, you just got to be honest with yourself as a business owner. Are you driving the value? Sure, you're driving part of it, but all your co-owners and your colleagues are driving the value right alongside you, and they should share in that growth and that upside over time. So we're starting to see that change. It's not happening fast enough, similar to climate change, but for us as a company, we wanted to make sure that we set that example, and how we did it was moving. Am I on the right thing? Yeah. I think I'm on the right side. So I think I went to. There we go. Got it. So we chose an ESOP. It took us a year and a half. We were exploring a merger. So short story is, at the end of 2016, the 30% investment tax credit for solar was about to step away. So we started looking at opportunities to scale, join other markets, continue to serve other products, services, and we explored a merger that would merge us with 2 additional BCorps, New York, Vermont. That would allow us to cover besides New York, most of New England. But through that experience of talking to debt equity investors and who's going to offer us what for 49% to fuel this merger, we quickly came to realize that we wanted to make sure that our employees who drove our value over the years got to see that upside, and we wanted to bet on our employees for this continued growth. So that's what we decided to do. That's why we decided to move to an ESOP. Unfortunately, we ran our business in a way that allowed us to transition to ESOP. And what I mean by that is we always invested our profits into growth. Yvonne Chenard from Patagonia said, growth for growth's sake is bullshit. Excuse my language. That was his quote. So we always wanted to make sure with our growth, it was fueled by the mission that we had in hand. And we put a big statement out there to say that we're basically transitioning off of fossil fuels and disrupting the energy economy. And with that takes scale. So that is why we decided, and again, we decided to bet on our employees to get us there. But it did allow us to transition to an ESOP, because when you decide to go an ESOP, you need to be profitable. Because when you transition, those profits, you become a tax-exempt organization with federal taxes. So that tax saving is what drives the transition to ESOP and allows the employees to buy out the company over time without any dollars out of their pocket, which is pretty powerful. So, all right. So how does that work? Again, when you're 100% ESOP, then you can choose to be, we could have chose to sell 30%, we could have chose to sell 50%, 75%, we chose to go all in at 100%. Now that allowed us no federal taxes, and that's gonna come around and pay for the company. So when you sell the company to an ESOP or the trust, it's not a bargain sale by any means, right? What we're saying as the 4 co-founders, 4 partners, is we are gonna sell our business today at today's value with a slight break. And what we're gonna give you, our co-owners now, all the value moving forward. And since the day we sold the company in 2017, we have more than doubled our overall revenue. So that additional revenue is all in the hands of our co-owners, a shared, upside, shared wealth, long term. And how it's actually done is you take an IOU, a promissory note. So the partners, if we say we agree to sell our company for $1 million, we take on a promissory note that, operating company, you will pay us back over 15 years at X rate. So that's how the company buys itself out. And at the end of the day, there's really, not to get too much in the weeds, but there's 2 transactions. One is the operating company, which was Revision Energy LLC, gets bought out by Revision Energy Inc., the new company. That's the first transaction. And they agree to, the partners of the original company agree to lend money to the new operating company. The second part of that is the company that's buying it, Revision Energy Inc., now agrees to lend money to a trust. And in return, the trust will hold 100,000 shares in what we call a suspense account. So that's how the high level of how it's broken down. And how it actually works is, the actual ESOP plan, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but when that expense account, which is the top bar there, holds 100,000 shares, every time, if in our specific example, we had $20,000 as a loan from the actual operating company, Revision Energy Inc., to the ESOP trust. Every time the operating company pays $500, which you do on an annual basis, it frees up 1/20th of those shares, 1/40th, 2,500 shares. Those 2,500 shares get freed up on an annual basis, and then they get allocated to all plan participants. Now, how do you become a plan participant? When we transitioned to ESOP, everybody in the company that day was now a plan participant. Anybody that we hire moving forward, they need to spend 1,000 hours in one calendar plan year to be eligible for the following year, to be eligible for to participate. Then the question is, how do they get allocated, right? So we made a traditional ESOP plans, and that's one point I'd like to make is when you create the ESOP, you have some flexibility in how you do it. There's traditional ways, there's non-traditional ways. Revision likes to think a little bit non-traditional. So how do they get allocated? We came up with a pretty flat allocation formula. We gave a slight bump to anybody that was here for tenure. So you got the allocation formula based on a weighted average. If you were here for 10 years prior to the ESOP, you got a 1.1 allocation factor. If you were here that day or just joined, you got a 1.0. All right. So what ESOPs traditionally do is it's based on your compensation. So you're compensated highly, you get a high allocation factor. We chose not to go that route. We chose a pretty flat allocation factor because what we're doing is building long-term wealth for everybody. So if you add more value to the company, you're getting paid more on an annual basis. There's the short term, today what you're getting paid in your paycheck, and then what the ESOP is long-term growth based on the value of the company. All right, so that's what we decided to do there. Okay, so I'm talking way too much, but so this is basically how it works. When we allocate 2,500 shares a year, and as we work together, build the value of the company, those shares continue to increase. We project for somebody that is got a low 1.0 allocation factor, they're going to see anywhere from $250,000 to $350,000 when they retire, or depending on over time. It's not a short-term get quick. It's a long-term wealth build. All right. This is our ESOP governance structure, and again, every company can there's certain limitations through the ERISA rules, but every company can kind of approach it how they will. But basically what happens is, again, all shares are held in a trust. Our trustees represent those shares, represent that trust. They don't, they represent the trust first. They don't really represent the employees, but the trustees elect the board. Well, at first, board elects trustees, and then eventually the trustees elect board. Board of director oversees management, and management is what oversees the company day-to-day operations, is how it breaks down. What are the ESOP benefits, right? It's a company ownership structure that's aligned over the long term with the company mission. It provides stability and continuity for eventual succession planning. And that's a big part that we did too, is we took 4 original partners, we expanded what we call our steering team as Sequoia, into our daily, strategic thinking long-term group that as the co-founders tend to step away, 2 of us are in our 40s, we'll be here for a while, 2 other ones are old. So they'll be out. We have more leadership getting grown from the bottom up. But what's key to an ESOP is the easy part is when you transition, it's a transaction. The hard part is building the culture and the ownership culture long-term. And that's really where you get the value out of the ESOP, because there is some cost to it. The value is now you have 275 co-owners working in step, driving the value of the company. And like Howard said, we need to be profitable, but we share that profit internally. So that's the important piece. But what we rolled out, you'll see behind us is Sun Squatch. It's our mascot. Is think like a customer, act like a co-owner. And we want to make sure that everybody in our company is thinking of the best interests of the customer and acting like an owner, getting up to speed on the financials, seeing how their role impacts the day-to-day value of the company. And that's the key to driving the value of the ESOP. But I think I'm running out of time, so I'm going to stop there. But thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dan. That was a great segue. Revision Energy is a certified B Corporation, and that's a great segue into our last speaker, Rebecca Hamilton from the W.S. Badger Company.
So exciting to hear all those different business models. So my name is Rebecca Hamilton, and I'm the co-CEO and one of the family owners of the W.S. Badger Company. So the Badger Company, let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Yeah. Okay. The Badger Company was founded by my father back in the mid-90s. And I think what's interesting about a family company is how much of the family's values get embedded into the business and our practices. And so when he started the company back in the mid-90s, he was actually a carpenter contractor at the time. He built healthy, non-toxic houses in the late 80s for people who had allergies. But he was also a serial entrepreneur. So basically, every day he'd come up with 2 or 3 business ideas, And eventually one of them would turn into a business, and then he would switch from one business to the next to the next. So I don't even know how many careers he had before Badger, probably about 20 or 30 from all the stories. But in the mid-90s, when he came up with Badger, it was just simply based on a need. He had cracked hands in the winter, needed something to heal the cracked hands, and created a balm. And then because he was a serial entrepreneur, that turned into a business. Now, what's different about this business is that it stayed in the family. We're now in the second generation, and many businesses change hands much faster than that. But for Badger, when we started this business, his only real goal was make something that I need, probably some other people need it, hopefully make a few bucks to take care of my family. He wasn't thinking about creating the next mission-driven sustainability leader, making organic products, being part of the natural products industry, being a mission-driven business. Like, none of those things actually crossed his mind. But being a family business meant that we had family values, and those values were part of what really directed the whole business. So we are mission-based, although I don't think we formalized a mission until maybe, 10 years after we started the business. And this mission, I think I'll call to a couple things in it. So one is that we wanted to run a business that is fun, fair, and profitable. Profitable is important even in a mission-driven business because money is a fuel, not a goal. So if you want to get somewhere and you need to take a car, you're not going to get there unless the car has fuel, whatever kind of fuel that might be. Hopefully it's not fossil fuel. And so same with the business, we recognized that we needed to be profitable to be successful, but we also recognized that our values as a family went far beyond being profitable, that we didn't just want to be a business that maximized profits and returned earnings to shareholders. We wanted to be a business that was creating some kind of good in the world because that's how we wanted to live our lives and what we wanted our business to reflect. So in around 2011, we moved from the classic startup business, which was basically literally a garage, a house. Then we moved into a warehouse, and then we had a rental part of a warehouse, and we decided that we were going to build our first building. And actually, I'll go back one slide. So this right here is where Badger is today. It's actually a building that my father built. Beautiful wooden post and beam structure. And we were getting ready to move into this building, and we were growing rapidly. And we had this thought of, how do we keep this nice, intimate family feel? At the time, we had about 20 employees, and we did nice little things. Like we had some parents would bring their babies to work, and we had lunches on Friday that we all shared together, and we had some very nice things that we did. And at that time, we were an organic company, so we were sourcing organic ingredients. And it felt like we were just doing everything right. But we were also very small. And so we realized that when we moved into this building, that this was signifying a transition, going from that small startup company to a rapidly growing, much larger manufacturing business. And we wanted to know, how do you maintain a mission? How do you prevent mission scope creep? How do you ensure that as we hire more employees and move into this next building and transition to a larger business, that we not only keep our mission, but we deepen our mission? And so around that time, we discovered BCorp. And I believe we'll be talking more about BCorp and Revision Energy as a BCorp. But BCorp is like a certification, like organic is for milk or fair trade is for coffee, but it's for the entire business. And it's a certification that looks at your governance structure, your environmental impact, your social impact, really every different part of your business. And in order to become a certified B Corp, you have to reach a certain score to demonstrate that you're doing good in the world. And there's an impact assessment that you have to take in order to pass that certification. And so during this transition period, we decided to take the impact assessment to see if we could discover a roadmap for making sure that we built our mission into the DNA of our business as we went through this transition. And so it turned out that we were able to certify, but just barely. We just barely squeaked by. And we realized that, well, we thought we were doing everything right. What it turned out was we had high ideals and visions, and we were doing some things right, but we didn't have the systems in place that would allow us to scale our business and build our mission into the DNA of our business. And that those systems, that structure, was something that we could get through becoming a certified B Corp. So around 2011, we became a certified B Corp. But B Corp, that certification is not just the impact assessment. In addition to getting a certain score on the impact assessment, they ask you to do two other things. One is that you need to sign a declaration of interdependence, saying that we'll work together with other businesses to create a new sector of the economy where business is a force for good. And while that letter isn't binding, I think it sets an intention in the community of B Corps to say that we're going to work together, that we're going to partner in this effort to figure out how we can be a force for good. And I think it's been something that's been transformational for our business because we're still a small business and we don't have all the answers, but having a much greater community of businesses that are working towards the same goals has helped us to improve on all of our mission-based initiatives, from our environmental impact to our social impact. And the third thing that you have to do is to either rewrite your articles of incorporation to put your social and environmental mission into that structure of what your purpose for being a business is, or in some cases, you have to actually change your legal structure to become a benefit corp. In the state of New Hampshire in 2011, it was both legally not a possibility for us to change our articles of incorporation, and we had no legal structure, no benefit corp structure for us to become a benefit corp. So we weren't able to fulfill that part of being a certified B Corp. And so that was actually something that we had to work on getting legislation passed so that, and I'm not actually sure, I think it's 2014 maybe. We actually passed benefit corp legislation in the state of New Hampshire, which allowed us to then fulfill our third obligation. And so Badger is now both family-owned, which I think has a lot to do with the choices we make as a company, but is also a certified B Corp and incorporated as a benefit corp, which I think for the longevity of our company, when we're looking at multiple generations out in the future, this is something that helps to protect our mission and also to ensure that it's not something that just lives in the family members, but is something that lives in every person who's at the company. So today we have about 100 employees. We're a manufacturer out in Gilsum, New Hampshire. And through being a B Corp, we've really been able to use the impact assessment as a roadmap to help look at every aspect of our business. When we first became a B Corp, we were, like I said, barely scraped by. We're now in the top 10% of all B Corps. And it's helped us to really think about our practices in an entirely different way. And looking at how do we build it into our standard operating procedures? How do we create measurable scientific goals for our environmental impact? If we were going to create a social benefit for one employee, how do we create that for all of our employees? So it's something that just doesn't happen once, but it's something that can happen year after year after year. And so a lot of the ways that we've built our business is around looking at a long-term business structure where our business can be a force for good.
So, for those of us that have been around for a while, this is definitely not business as usual, right? This is business as unusual. These are very different kinds of businesses with very different kinds of ownership and governance structures that are really about sort of business for profit, but also for people and planet. And so we wanted just to spend a little bit of time digging into a few deeper questions with the panelists. Just a couple of clarifying questions to each panelist. And Howard, I'm going to start with you. So you talked really compellingly about the power and scale that cooperatives have. And really you talked about how cooperatives can really kind of level the playing field, that they can allow small, independently owned companies to really compete with the big players through that kind of combination of buying power and leverage by being a part of a cooperative. It was a really compelling talk. If that's the case, and if cooperatives are so effective at kind of creating a level playing field, why aren't there more cooperatives in America?
Well, first of all, around the world there are. And so a lot of countries, cooperatives, I was just in Rwanda, I said in November, and they had the International Co-op Alliance meeting in Rwanda, and the reason it was in Rwanda was they were coming out of the genocide where 1 million people in Rwanda got killed and neighbors killed each other. That's 30 years ago. And the head of the Rwanda government said that cooperatives really took them out of where they were of neighbors hating neighbors because it was democratically controlled. So in Rwanda, a country of 12 million people, they have now 8,000 cooperatives in the last 25 years, and 6 million out of the 12 million people belong to a cooperative. And they said it was totally the reason that they would have a peaceful transition from where they were. So it's an interesting question because cooperatives, as I said, are very entrepreneurial. I must get a call every single week from somebody that wants to start a cooperative in some fashion. Fascinating types of cooperatives, I must say, just intriguing types of cooperatives. So probably the missing link is the capital market that loves to fund the Ubers of the world. They don't make money, but they're hoping that there's a $50 billion exit of Ubers and Lyfts and WeWorks. There's an enormous amount of money that goes in because somebody's going to get a few people are going to get very, very rich. When a cooperative, everybody does well. Everybody has an income that's better than they could ever do. They all own the company. And so the capital market doesn't like that as much, although we see now more money coming in from other sources, socially responsible funds, because they realize it is a way to grow. My son, Greg Brodsky, started actually the first incubator accelerator for co-ops in the country called Start.coop. And so it's fascinating. So just give you, there were 6 cooperatives started last year, there's another 6 starting this year. But one is a company called Core Staffing out of Baltimore. So it's a staffing company and it's owned by the employees. So one other interesting part is, so all the employees are former prisoners. So what is the toughest thing when you get out of prison? You can't get a job. They not only have a job, they own the company. And it's interesting, not one person's gone back to prison because they own it. So cooperatives have enormous power and more capital has to go into it to really have the effect that it can to really, we're talking about inequality and opportunity. I think a lot of people want to maybe start companies or do something socially responsible. Cooperatives are a socially responsible way to do something that could be scalable, that's owned by the people. Not everybody needs to be $1 billion. You can do very well in running a cooperative or starting a cooperative. You're maybe not going to make $5 billion, but you can do well.
Right. So I think what you're saying, Howard, is sort of one of the missing links to allowing more cooperatives to exist in this economy is really about getting investors on board. And so, Dan, you mentioned Larry Fink and BlackRock, other large investment management companies like Fidelity now and others, right, are starting to really put their money to invest in companies like cooperatives and other things that can really sort of build wealth more broadly and address big societal issues like climate change.
It's interesting, the cooperatives in South America, so in Brazil, the healthcare, a lot of cooperatives in healthcare, they actually have somebody go to every single home once every 3 months to see how they're doing. You know, because they care about them.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, let's hope we see a lot more cooperatives in the future. Dan, I wanted just to ask you a question. So I love this idea of employee ownership, right? It's really about, you know, one worker, one owner. But I want to sort of ask a skeptic's question. So when you have 225 employee owners now, something like that, doesn't that just lead to chaos? Is like, you know, we got 200 or 300 owners all wanting to sort of lead the company. How does that not lead to chaos?
Yeah, interesting. I think I mentioned it, you know, while I was up there speaking, is the easy part was going through the transition to an ESOP, transactional. The hard part is, what do you do next? How do you figure out that model that's going to work internally, so we can avoid chaos? But you know, as far as our governance, it's pretty similar to, you know, an existing corporation. You have a board, you have trustees, the fiduciary requirements to the actual trust that holds the shares, and a board oversees management. So that's all in place, but it needs to be. We needed to educate everybody on staff about what an ESOP actually means. I should actually back up. First, we had to educate ourselves on how to deploy it internally in the best way to go about that. We set up an ESOP 101, ESOP 201. Then we, you know, recently set up an ESOP committee that its job is to, you know, learn more about the ESOP and the model, and then spread that knowledge in all. We have 5 branches across 3 states. So it was a learning curve for sure. And I remember, you know, we announced to the entire company that we were purchasing a small outfit up in Upper Valley. And I got plenty of reaction to that and feedback saying, why wasn't I involved? Do I have a vote in this process? And first I said, well, this is great. Everybody's thinking like an owner. And it is really bought into what the future is of this company. That's great to see. But I had to explain that, no, the strategic decision-making still rests with the board. And we are open to input, you know, in those decisions. But, you know, what the participants of the trust have for voting rights is, you know, they would have to approve any dissolution or sale, you know, to another company, which is very rare for ESOPs to do that. One example was the brewery out of Colorado there, Belgium Brewing. They just recently sold to another large company, Kieran. But yeah, so it's continually a learning process for all involved on the actual structure.
Wonderful, great, thank you. And Rebecca, my sort of skeptic question for you. So benefit corporations, of which Badger is one, are legally obliged to consider all stakeholders. But there's no, certainly in the state of New Hampshire, there's no sort of tax break or tax incentive for doing that. You pay tax just like any other corporation. And you sort of got to this a little bit in your presentation, but why not just be a regular LLC? Why bother with all the extra stuff to be a benefit corporation if there's no tax incentive?
Well, for Badger, there's a couple different reasons. One is it's part of being a certified B Corp. So as a certified B Corp, when the B Corp certification was created, it was created as part of an effort to create a new sector of the economy where business is a force for good. And to create a new sector of the economy, there's several different factors that the founders were looking at. So they were looking at how do we define whether a business is doing good, and that's with the impact assessment. And then the second is how do we create a legal structure to protect the business so that they can enact their mission? And then the third was how do we funnel funding into those businesses? So the Benefit Corp legislation that was passed allows a business like Badger to write our social and environmental mission into our legal structure for being a business. Now, as a family business, there's only a few of us who are actual owners. And so there's not a lot of concern of the shareholders forcing us to do something because it's just my family. And also, as a family business, we actually don't take dividends, which means that all of the profits are going back to both to the employees and to the company. So we're a little bit of a different structure, and it's less important for us. But from an ethical standpoint, it felt wrong for us to have our legal purpose for being a business to maximize profits and return earnings to shareholders, because that's not what we created. That's not how we were running our business. And so in theory, it protects the business long term to follow our mission, but in the short term, it just felt like the right fit.
That's awesome, thank you. And so my last skeptic question for all the panelists to sort of jump in on. A skeptic might say this is all well and good, right? But these different governance and ownership structures that you've all chosen will have extra costs. They're going to be more complicated. Can you just talk very specifically about how these are also really good for your business? I think you've talked really eloquently about how they're good for people and planet. Can you just talk about what value you see these as actually creating also for your business?
Yeah, so I would say in ours, first of all, I would say there's a less cost, not more cost, actually, in running a cooperative. It's less cumbersome. And we are very, as I said, extremely profitable company. The only difference is we give 100% of the profit back to the members. And it's not, so the only thing is, if I did a lousy job, even though I founded the company, somebody could tell me to leave tomorrow. We have a board of directors, we have a board of directors, but we also have so we have 15 different cooperatives in 4 countries. And within each one, we have what we call an advisory council, and we have a regional group by state. We call it our Congress and Senate, so that if the members, we always say, do what's right. If we weren't doing something that was right for the members, then it would not work. If we don't make our members profitable, then it does not work. But we've been very fortunate over the years. So we're a company with no debt. We don't owe the banks a single penny. We never have since we founded the company. And so that gives us actually a lot of leeway to do what's right for our members.
So it's not either profit or do good. It's both. Right?
No, like I said, we're extreme. We have never had a quarter without being profitable in 35 years.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's many companies that could say that. And it was interesting, during the recession, so almost 25% of small businesses that we were involved with went out of business during the recession. If they were a member of our cooperative, we lost 1%. So we did 2,500% better. We kept almost every single business, whether a bike store, ski store, a child care center. We kept almost every single person in business because we lent them money. We renegotiated their leases. We put consultants in there to help them. Banks pulled their loans, and we went in and helped because they owned us. We were all in it together. There wasn't misalignment. I think one of the things that happens in our society, there's total misalignment. There's money over here. There's the consumer over here and the shareholders over here. The shareholders are not the people getting the service. In our case, it's total alignment of values.
Yeah. Rebecca, do you agree with that, disagree with that?
No, absolutely agree with that. I think for Badger, one thing that's been particularly noticeable in the last number of years is that in the state of New Hampshire, a lot of businesses find it hard to find talented workforce. And I have a recollection of going to a workforce development forum a couple of years ago and having most of the businesses there talking about how do we get people to stay in New Hampshire, how do we drive in talented workforce, how do we lower the attrition rate. And it was really eye-opening for me because at Badger, we have less than 1% attrition rate. Most of our employees, once they're there, they stay there unless they're moving across the country or completely changing careers. And we get incredibly talented people who seek us out and come work for us and are incredibly dedicated to the business. And that, I think, speaks to the way that we treat our employees and the relationship we have, and that they care about what we're trying to accomplish in the world. I also think that as a business, it helps us to weather ups and downs that are happening out in the world because we have very loyal customers. And then also when we talk about our supply chain, even with climate change, we're seeing that impact. We use a lot of plant-based ingredients, and that impacts agriculture in different countries. And because we have long-term close relationships with our suppliers, we also find that we're more resilient in being able to get what we need to make our products. So on all of those fronts, the way that we're choosing to do our business is having a positive impact.
Yeah, on the sort of business's success and longevity and resilience. Yeah, really interesting. Dan, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, for specific to ESOPs, there is an additional cost on an annual basis. We need to get an annual valuation done to set the share price. Eventually we'll bring in an external trustee. They have to be paid. So there is external costs, but they're definitely made up by the sense of pride everybody has internally in the company, that they can walk through those doors when they show up at work and they own the company. They own multiple shares of the company that they're working for, and they're driving the value. And there's a lot of value in that. We interact with our customers constantly, and it's just something that every one of us can say and be proud of, that we're a co-owner of this company. I had one of my colleagues recently tell me that she was at an event, and when she was talking to somebody and said that she was a co-owner of Revision Energy, they were like, "Oh, wow, that's really awesome." So it just provides that additional value. I know there's numbers out there. The ESOP Association reports that 84% of all ESOPs, there's about 7,000 of them in the U.S. They report increased motivation, increased productivity, and I'm a realist, so we have 275 employees. I don't think we're going to get 275 that are bought in to the ownership model day in and day out. But if I shoot for 90-95%, and that makes us just that much more strong of our company. So it's definitely worth it.
That's pretty awesome. Thank you. Well, we'd love to open it up for questions from the audience. So I think there are some microphones in the back. So just stick a hand up. Someone's going to run right over there, Kathy, far by the window. If there's if you want to put another hand up, we'll get another question. There's another mic in the back. Okay. Yeah, over to you, sir.
It's about cooperatives. So, how do you deal with cooperatives that have gone on a rise, such as Dairy Farmers of America, which has been documented to, while it's still owned by the farmers, it's not. It doesn't seem to really work for the farmers. So what about businesses that have adopted this corporate structure but don't actually follow through? Because with a cooperative, there's not always like a certification like a BCorp that holds it to a standard.
Great question. Thank you.
Yeah. So I would say 90, there's always a renegade, 98%. First of all, have much more longevity than regular corporations. Cooperative last, as far as a corporation, about 4 times what a regular corporation lasts in business. Very few cooperatives go out of business. You can always have bad management in any organization, and that's when the board has to make sure that you have proper management. What that usually comes down to is poor management. That you have somebody that either their beliefs are bad, or you can always hire poor management. Mm-hmm. I would say. Kaylee's here with me. We have a nonprofit called Cooperatives for a Better World, and we've traveled the world seeing other cooperatives. I would say that 99.9% of cooperatives are unbelievably ethical, driven, and socially responsible, and care about their members. You always can get, as I said, somebody that is just, they put in a position they're not capable. That can happen in any company. It's rare in a cooperative, but can happen.
Yeah, and I think you were highlighting that these ownership and governance structures don't avoid the need for really great leadership and great management, right? All of these companies are successful because they have good governance and ownership structures, and they also have really talented leadership, right? That's why you're all in business school, right? We still need those really strong management leadership skills to run effective businesses. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Other questions? Yep, right in the sort of middle, like fourth row, Faina.
When the cooperatives have what?
If the cooperatives lose money,
Well,
what do you do with it?
So hopefully, first of all, there's enough assets. So it's like anything else. The cooperative normally pays dividends, and it would come out of the assets of the cooperative that they might have to take a loan, or it would come out of the liquidity of the cooperative. And some cooperatives, especially, they can go through periods where they can lose money. We've been very fortunate, but cooperatives have, in economic times, have the ability to lose money as well as make money.
All right. Well, we actually have some questions for all of you in the audience, and this is part of your class. So we're going to transition to some questions up on the screen. So if you could get your eye clickers out. And just while we're doing that, I just wanted to say a really big thank you to our panelists today. You've heard today from 3 companies. CCA Global is one of the largest privately held companies in America, right here in New Hampshire. WS Badger Company is one of the fastest growing private companies in New Hampshire. And Revision Energy is now the largest renewable energy company in New England. These are all companies that are doing really well in traditional terms, right? But they're also doing really good in terms of sort of people and planet. And so just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you for being here, for the work you do every day, and for sharing your story with all of us. So thank you. All right, students, eye clickers, you know how these work. Okay, so I think you all know how they work. You press hold on the orange on and off button, and when a box appears in the left, you need to type in AA. All right, everyone got it? Everyone good? All right, let's go to the first question. All right, so first of all, which section of business ethics are you in? Is your lead professor Professor Armstrong, Professor Woodman, or Professor Windegatter? Okay, so answer A if you're in 9:40 to 11, answer B if you're in 11:10 to 12:30, and option C if you're in 2:10 to 3:30. All right, are we good? All right, so next question. All right, were you paying attention to what Rebecca said? In what year did benefit corporation legislation become active in New Hampshire? Was it 2015, 2012, or 2019?
I think I might have said I wasn't sure.
Let's see what you guys... All right, A, 2015. Most of you got it right. Congratulations. All right, next question. True or false? Offering employee ownership does not make them part of the management team. True or false? A or B? So A, true, that's right? Just because you're an owner, it doesn't necessarily mean you're part of the management team. That's how we have an effectively run employee-owned company. All right, last question. How many people globally are members of at least one cooperative? Over 500 million, over 8 billion, or over 1 billion? This was, if you were listening to Howard's presentation. All right, very good. Over 1 billion people was the correct answer. Excellent. All right, we've got one last question for you. So if you were really inspired by the role models that we've brought to campus today, and you think you might want to use your business education as a force for good in the world, you can connect with UNH's Center for Social Innovation and Enterprise, also known as the Changemaker Hub. This is a set of programs where we can really help you get real-world experience, and learn more about how do we use business for people, planet, and profit. So, if you were inspired by these change makers, what step will you take next to be a change maker yourself? Do you want to A, meet with one of the peer student change maker coaches? B, do you want to check out change maker internship programs for this summer at UNH? Or C, do you want to work with a company in the fall, helping them assess their impact and become a certified B Corporation? Okay, let's see what you guys think. All right, lots of interest in summer internships, so get on it quickly because they're going fast. We've got some great internships this summer. Thank you, everyone. Great to see you. Thank you again to our panelists.